Good evening. This is Rob Bell. This is Getting the Record Straight, the Truth to Power segment, talking with Amadee Braxton, particularly about her years as Director of Development for Iraq Veterans Against the War. And she's recounting some things, but I do want to jump in for a second to add my 1 cent. Because I remember that in fact, I was on the radio on WRD during that lead up to the war. And as you were speaking about it, Amadee, it was like you were taking words really out of my mouth. Particularly at that time, I used to say, I cannot believe this is happening. And I was in college in the 70s. And I hate to date myself, but, recall a lot of what, I actually could have gone to Vietnam. But anyway, I couldn't believe, I just couldn't fathom how people were allowing, as I said earlier to you before we started, somebody who was such an obvious liar and who had performed so miserably leading up to and including 9/11, and how they were letting him do this, and Cheney, one of the most despicable political people anyway, I've ever seen on the political stage, how they were letting them, fashion this and fabricate this whole situation was just so beyond me. And then I just want to say, I remember, in fact, there was a tremendous outpouring of dissent and protest all over. I mean, I was at a huge one here in Philly. I can't remember whether that was, I don't think it was the Republican National Convention, but I remember here, I remember going to a big one in DC, and I remember going to New York and attending a whole program at Riverside Church. Amy Goodman was there. And in fact, that was the time, that was the church where, of course, Dr. King gave his famous anti-Vietnam speech. And, so there was a great deal of support against, resistance against the war, but the corporate and political powers, really mobilized to turn public opinion. So I just wanted to get that in. And so once you got started, how did things go after the organization got started?
It was interesting. I mean, it was an interesting time. We had both the veterans themselves organizing in our organization, but then we also had Military Families Speak Out, which was a national organization coming together of family members of veterans and active duty soldiers who were really concerned about the well-being and of their loved ones, but also from an anti-war perspective as well. So they were also organizing, and then there was some of the old lefties who, like yourself and others who were active during the Vietnam era were, reactivated around it. So there was a lot happening, as well as, students organizing. And so there was like a whole movement, a kind of renewed anti-war movement that was happening. And, my role in the organization quickly pivoted to, I had set up the administrative infrastructure, but then I quickly pivoted to having to deal with this huge influx of donations we were getting unsolicited, because people were just looking for ways to express their outrage. And a lot of times people do that through donating. So we were getting, when you go to the post, you see the postal workers carrying those bins in the post office,
right,
those white plastic bins. We were getting, at high point, probably in 2006, which was when the surge was happening. It was a really bloody period in Iraq. We were getting, a couple of those full of donations a week in
Mm.
our office. And so, we were hiring people and processing donations, and as time, and we were doing answering a lot of media requests, deploying our members to talk to their local paper or talk to national media outlets. And, but we felt like even with all of the words from veterans themselves who had lived through the experience, it still was not enough to counter the broad narrative to the point where we felt like it needed to go. And so leading up to 2008, I guess late 2007, we decided we were going to have a national gathering similar to what had happened during Vietnam, a Winter Soldier
Right, okay.
event where we would basically allow war veterans and active duty military to tell their stories live on camera and see if we could draw attention that way to national media. And we basically had a satellite broadcast set up. Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! Were there on site broadcasting every day. It was a week-long event.
Where was it?
It was held at the National Labor College in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
They gave us the facility for free. It was a secure facility. We had to have a lot of security because we were being threatened by right-wing groups. And for many of the veterans, we had active duty members who were going to be speaking out publicly for the first time, putting their military careers at risk. And so we did a lot to kind of set it up we had, on-site volunteer counselors for the veterans who were going to be testifying. So it was basically a series of days of I think it was a few days of testimonials, basically. People telling the hard truth about the things they had seen and been through, whether it be killing of children and, civilians, unarmed civilians, the use of unauthorized and illegal chemical weapons in Iraq, their experiences with the VA not providing treatment properly for PTSD, the level of suicide rates that they were seeing among their friends and peers.
And that's still occurring, right?
Yeah. The suicide rate among veterans is still up there. So this was our way of trying to do a bigger kind of expose all at once instead of these dribs and drabs of stories that we were trying to do as individual members doing that. And it was, we did, and we hired a professional PR firm to do outreach to make connections with the big mainstream media like New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, the major TV networks. Of course, the media environment back then was much different than it is now because it's so dominated by social media now. And we really put a lot into this. We got a lot of funding from different foundations who were particularly interested in 2007 in supporting an anti-war veteran organization, in part because Obama was running for president, and Obama, part of his what made him distinct, or what he really upheld as making him distinct in his candidacy, was that he had come out against the war in Iraq.
Right.
And he was running against Hillary Clinton, and she had voted for the war in Iraq, of course, as a New York senator. And so there were certain forces in the powers that be and philanthropy and stuff who really wanted to support our message because they saw it as indirectly bolstering Obama.
I get it. Amadee, can we kind of not change, but just move the dial a little bit up to now.
Sure.
There's just, I watched Bernie Sanders earlier today giving a fairly impassioned speech about decreasing the military budget a smidgen. And of course, it has increased over the last 2 decades exponentially. There's so much about this I could talk about that is absolutely disgraceful, and just coming up with the words is easy, and I'm trying to keep it clean here. But with the resistance going on against police brutality and police overreach and the militarization, talk about defunding. How do you make a connection between the two, between the military and imperialism, if you will, and what's going on now with the resistance in many cities with the police?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I would say that, we have seen a militarization of the police in this country probably since the so-called war on drugs,
Mm-hmm.
where, the federal government and local governments were willing to fund ad nauseum local police forces and equip them with military-grade weaponry
Mm-hmm.
to combat this quote-unquote war on drugs. And we have to, be honest that black leaders were calling for this as well. It wasn't just white leaders, white political leaders who were calling for this.
Mm-hmm.
The scourge of crack cocaine in black communities basically caused this reactionary approach that said we need more police, and instead of looking at it as a healthcare problem that it was. So we had that, and we're reaping we're reaping what was sown then. Now, in terms of the ongoing crisis of policing in this country, and the fact that the police have been given so much power and leeway and authority in our country, and have created a mentality for themselves, which was bolstered by the political leadership in this country, that they are a military force, that they can use brutal force against people and communities versus more kind of old school neighborhood policing type of approach. Now, I know that was not always the case in many communities, but we've seen kind of the logical conclusion of the origin of the police as slave catchers till now. And I would say that, as we talk about shifting money, like this call for defunding the police, shifting money out of policing toward a different way of thinking about community care and safety and well-being, we also need to be talking about the military-industrial complex and the tremendous amount of resources that our tax dollars go into the military, the military budget. Because if we're talking about really making fundamental shifts in our society, putting money into progressive education, into universal health care, into saving our environment and turning back the clock, if we can at this point, on climate change, that is where most of the money is, and, the military, of course, in terms of climate change and environment,
we've only got
the biggest polluters.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we only have a few seconds left.
Okay.
But go ahead.
So anyway, my point is that overall, we need to really infuse our domestic agenda as progressives with an anti-war agenda. We can't. The two are inextricably related, and we can't get the things that we want in terms of progressive policy change without taking money out of the military budget. And so we have to be talking about those things together.
Amen to that. You get no problem out of me. And yeah, absolutely. I'm in total agreement. Amadee, thanks so much. Enjoy your time with your mom up in New York. And again, thanks. Take care.